Geert, Maarse. I'm the host tonight, which means I will be introducing the different perspectives we will share tonight on how to develop. Am I okay, Volkert? Yeah, I'm sort of. Should I take another mic? Continue, and otherwise I will start shouting into the audience without a microphone. We will share different perspectives on how to work. I was saying something about perspectives. Different perspectives on how to work climate positive, build climate positive, and what role materials can play in this process. That's what tonight is all about. We will have a keynote presentation by Vincent van Meulen on the first row there. Then 4 perspectives behind me at the tables. Discussion with the panel and obviously with you as well. But before we start, it's an honor to give the floor to the director of the IABR. Please welcome Saskia van Stein.
Thank you so much. Yes, literally a warm word of welcome on behalf of Groep A, on behalf of the CARBONLAB, on behalf of the KeileCollectief. And for those of you who do not know me, I'm indeed, I keep on saying the recently appointed director of the International Architecture Biennale, but it's been over a year, although it still feels we're just about to begin. It's an honor to stand here in front of so many people, and I brought only 2 slides, because I just wanted to share one key element about tonight, which is, of course, this notion of storytelling. We are, I feel, in this moment of huge transition. Everybody reads about it, we dream about it, but what is it? Which stories do we have, and which new narratives will we together explore? And with our curatorial team, we have looked into It's About Time. So which kind of temporalities or velocities do we need in the architectural and urban realm to start the conversation on, I would dare say, a new agenda for our field? I'm just going to drop it out there. Maybe we'll talk about that in a second. But in this in the Faro, a former container of fossil fuels, a ruin in and of itself, we looked at 3 perspectives: the activist, the ancestor, basically looking at knowledge in the past, and the accelerator. Just to drop it out there, maybe this notion of time can be visited. How much time do we still have to address and find a vocabulary for the challenges we are facing as architects and urban planners, of course, in a larger and broader realm of collaborators? Well, time is ticking, as you can see here by the monotonic hourglass of debris. But one thing I wanted to share that has made me extremely optimistic and gave me great, again, a feeling that if human ingenuity and the proper legislation are combined in a group effort, that we can tackle the challenges ahead. Now, for those of you who do not recognize this, it's the hole in the ozone layer. About 3 weeks ago, there was it was mentioned that it is actually shrinking. So you see that above the Antarctic. And for those of you, I had to look it up, and I have to look it up again. So the ozone layer is actually called chlorofluorocarbons, also known as CFCs. And the reason I mention this enormous long title is that tonight that I hope that we come up with something as a better word than CO2. So that's the challenge as far as I'm concerned, because I believe that with this CFCs, it was so abstract we couldn't grasp it. And with calling it the hole in an ozone layer, at least we had an imaginary. So it's an immaterial imaginary, but I hope that we can unpack that tonight. And of course, with the CFCs that have been globally banned, the only thing that we really had to change was our hairdos. I'll keep it at that. It's a very short warm world of welcome, because I'm only here to sit, enjoy, and learn from scientists, public speakers, architects that know much more about this topic than myself. Please give it up for a deeper introduction to the initiator of the CARBONLAB, Willem van Genugten.
Thank you, Saskia. I changed my hairdo as well. It's ozone friendly. Welcome everyone. It's really amazing the amount of people that are here tonight. And I want to thank Saskia for the brainstorming on the content. I want to thank the KeileCollectief on the support of making this whole event possible. And the team of CARBONLAB, of whom a lot of them are in the room, I hope, for bringing about the whole movement together. Narrative, changes, challenges. This image pretty much summarizes what we have to do. Is there anyone in the room who doesn't know this image, by the way? Okay, then I explain it specifically for Marjolein. This image is a representation of the lines or of the changes relative to the registered average of how temperature changes over the time per year. One line is 1 year. Blue means it's colder than average. Red means it's warmer than average. Pretty obvious where we are at the moment. We are at dark red, purple. And our goal is to go to a situation where this relaxes, where we go back to blue, preferably where we cool down the planet to where it used to be. So far, very simple. What it actually means to reach the Paris Accord is, contrary to what a lot of people say at the moment, or the past few years, is we have to go carbon negative. Carbon neutral is not the solution. Carbon neutral means far beyond 1.5 degrees warming of the planet. Only if we remove, by the end of the century, 10 gigatons of CO2 per year, we are having a chance to meet 1.5 degrees, let alone less than 1.5 degrees. That's where it becomes interesting for architects, for builders, for contractors, for material developers, because it means we have to change the way we think about our profession, or at the very least, we have to add a line of thinking next to the spatial design, next to cost calculations. We have to think about what is the footprint of what we do, and how do we, as the next lecturer will say, how do we make sure the buildings add quality and add something to our ecology instead of making it just a little bit less damaging? Quite a fundamental question. The CARBONLAB has been founded for this purpose. How do we transition our projects to carbon neutral and then carbon negative within the foreseeable time? Anything we do that doesn't work within that framework is actually a waste of our time. What we did, amongst many other things, is research. What kind of narrative do we find within something that everyone in the industry has in common with each other? Where are there not differences, but where do we actually meet each other at the table? This is actually regulation, existing regulation, upcoming regulation, something that we all have to deal with no matter what. This is research that we've done. There's a lot happening, there's a lot coming towards us. Since the last status of this image is already outdated, so that's, I think, in this case, a good thing. New regulation has been put forward. What the regulation research showed us is there's a lot of regulation in place concerning energy. What do we do with the existing building stock? How do we reconceptualize new building stock to be energy neutral or even energy positive? A lot of the regulation on materials are still coming. It's still pending, or it's about to be put in place. That material regulation is what we talk about tonight. You all know wood. Wood is everywhere now in the conversations, which is a great thing. It's very important. But wood is not the holy grail. It doesn't solve everything. Especially if you realize that, according to the UN, not numbers that we came up with, about every 28 days we build worldwide the entire mass of New York City, all the 5 boroughs. That means that at the moment, since the new year, we have added almost 2 entire New York cities to the planet. Concrete, steel, wood, glass, light posts, whatever you can imagine. So we have to look far beyond just wood. We have to look beyond what you can do with different materials. That's what tonight is about. When you look at this question, we as architects at least find out in the conversations we have with very many people, very interesting and inspiring people, is that you start to look at what is actually the story behind the new material, what is the story behind the innovation. How can you maybe come to completely new solutions or new systems that put the narrative from having very competing interests in terms of water, in terms of space, in terms of availability of resources, to combined interests, shared interests, converging interests. So how does looking through the lens of the question, through material lens, how do you actually access completely new networks that solve other problems as well? We have fantastic speakers to discuss this. Unfortunately, due to family circumstances, 2 people have cancelled. Very unfortunate, but we have 5 very good panel members here tonight. And we hope to learn a lot from them. I give the floor to...
Thanks, and we're getting started. Is the world better off with the building that I am adding to it? According to our next guest, the answer to this question in 99.9% of the cases is no, and he wanted to change this. That led to the development of a method for designing radically sustainable and regenerative buildings, and he will explain how it works. As simple as that. Please welcome to the stage partner at Kraaijvanger, Vincent van der Meulen.
The mic. Oh, yeah. Thanks. My name is Vincent van Meulen. This is the book I wrote, and we're all in the building industry. You're getting mine as well. We're all in the building industry, and I think most of the people here are here because they want to do something good with their buildings. But most of the buildings are not doing something good. And because I wanted to change that, we asked ourselves first the question, is it even possible to have a positive impact on the ecology? And well, there is examples. I think the answer is yes, actually. We can have a positive impact on the ecology because we made such a mess of our world. We depleted our water, air, soil so badly that maybe people as old as I am still know that we learned that our fresh water was kind of inhabited by all these creatures. If you look at the water and how it has been since the 80s, due to our agriculture, everything was actually dead. But due to a lot of small local interventions, a lot of the freshwater bodies are regenerating at the moment. So locally you can have this impact. You can also have it regionally. All the regional policies, cities, everyone busy with trying to making the air that was top left is, I don't know, nitrogen, or on the right is fine dust. We are improving this by legislation, by 100,000 little things we're doing, but we're cleaning the air. We think our forests are disappearing, but on the left, 1860, I think 1% of the country was still consisting out of forest. Nowadays, it's almost 10. So even with all these cities, we are making more forest in this country. So that's on a national level. International level, we are trying to clean our rivers, making it fit again for the biodiversity that used to be in our freshwater rivers. So all these countries from the Rhine and the Maas have programs to to clean our rivers so they can function again like they used to do in the biodiversity. And I read the same newspaper, probably. Even on a global level, by collaboration, we can really make a difference. But everything is going way too slow, and us as a profession, architects, builders, we're not really helping, because every building we make, on most of the things we've just discussed, we're working in the opposite direction. So we make a nice, shiny new building that looks clean, maybe even produces more energy than we need in that building. But in the life cycle, where all these materials come from, far away, mostly in China, in Africa, where all these materials come from, we are causing harm to the rivers, harm to the air, harm to the soil, and we need to do that differently. So is the world better off with my building? Is the world better off with my company? Like Paul Polman asked himself. We need to be able to answer this with yes for all these building industry companies that are present here. And currently it's no, because this is what's happening. This is what we're doing with all the new buildings we're making. Every new building increases the problems. We're not part of the solution yet. Everybody's fighting to be part of the solution, but if we're really honest, we're not there yet. So we need a new generation of buildings, and I think many people are trying to focus on different facets. You cannot be a specialist in everything, even though a lot of architects think they are. The strategy we chose is a bit more broad than on looking at the materials and CO2. But I think they tie very much into the line of thinking of the CARBONLAB. We look at the building as an intervention, spatial intervention, where currently we're taking clean stuff into this building while building, but also during the whole time that the building is being used, 50 years, 100 years. We take clean things in, clean air, clean water, clean materials, and afterwards they're exhausted, most of the time more polluted. What if every building, instead of causing more harm to the ecology, what if every building takes in stuff but exhausts it more clean? If every building would clean the air, would clean water, would generate more electricity than it needs. That's our dream. And we developed a method in the last 10 years to make this happen. So we defined 7 flows: air, water, energy, soil, biodiversity, materials, building materials, and waste/food. All these things go through a building during the lifetime in different speed, but they all go through. And for every step, for every flow, we define 7 steps: formulate an ambition, measure your baseline, where you are now, harvest focused, translating live, use and enjoy it wisely, store if necessary, purify out of love, and measure and communicate. So in the end, it's you define something, you define an ambition, which should be we will purify the air, but in the end you have to measure and show and be honest about it if it worked out or not. And you have all the steps in between. So if you follow this, it seems very simple. 7 times 7 steps, 7 flows, 7 steps, you can reach a positive footprint. They're very hard to do. It is very it's kind of technical, engineer-like, and of course, that's not how the building should be like. So in the end, this new generation of buildings should also heal people, heal the relationship that people have with nature, and bring them back into balance. Why we wrote this down and why we share this method as much as possible is because we found out, we did some projects that were really far ahead of time on this circularity and having a positive footprint already 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And after that we thought every building will be better now. But we ran into so many problems, every project different, we made so many mistakes. And we found out that actually it's all about the collaboration, all about clear ambitions, shared ambitions, the common ground that Willem was talking about, especially with the client and with the end users of the building. And if you have to get everybody in line and everybody in the same direction, shared sense of urgency, already foreseeing, knowing the threats that we will encounter during the process, but already knowing as well the tools we're going to use to overcome them, sharing the same dreams. That's what the method is about. It's a very small book. It's a short method, because nobody reads anymore a book of 500 pages in a building industry average team, let's say. So 2 hours of reading and everybody's kind of in the same direction. And what it can bring, and we're experiencing this now in many projects, it's still, of course, really hard work, but this used to be our experience. If we wanted to push boundaries on sustainability, we had to fight 4 fights even within the design team, because the mechanical engineer was having a completely different idea of what is sustainable. I mean, we're not afraid for discussion, but a lot of times it was very unfruitful because you have contradictory interests. And by focusing everybody creating a common ground together, it becomes a more additive process. So instead of doing your BREEAM label, where in the end the exercise is, together with the whole design team, to score the points for the minimum amount of money with the minimum effort. That's most of the time the dynamics within the design team. We're gonna try to purify as much air as we can possible. Create as much biodiversity as possible. So it becomes an additive and much more fun exercise. Creating a flow within the design team if all goes well. And in the method we also, is it this? Oh, this is the best slide so far, actually. What we did is we also included a big checklist in the booklet of actually all the mistakes that we've been making in the last couple of years by figuring out certain stuff too late in the design process. So for the step-by-step, taking you along the phases, from sketch design to preliminary design, what you have to do when to be able to reach a positive footprint. Is this still gonna work? Now the image, yeah, sorry. It's there we go. Yes. So this was the checklist. So step by step with the tools that you can use in which phase. We learned this in many projects in the last 10 years. And designing like this really creates an extra dimension to the whole design. So this is a kind of outdoor space in a pond that purifies the air of the exhaust air of the building, which is also a meeting room. We've managed to make buildings that are 80% compostable, because not 99%, because the contractor all of a sudden started with laminated wooden beams instead of normal wooden beams. We created spaces that purify air and purify water in a city hall, for example. If you make your building completely off the grid, it allows you to have a completely new kind of freedom. We created strategies for completely unmotivated clients on the level of sustainability, that we do all kind of undercover circularity, where we only give them options that are really good in circularity performance, but they don't know about it. We just don't talk about it and only give them these options. We had buildings where we had to demolish part of the existing structure and part of the existing building, but we managed to gather all the dynamics of the client and the end users and make this challenge. This was for the City Hall in Helmond, and created a challenge of, we want everything of this building, everything we demolish should have a second life. And we managed to find a second life for 99.2% of the demolishing materials. Some within the building, some refurbished, like the toilets, some reused, some in different buildings. Most of the time we try to do it as local as possible. We're currently busy with making an energy plant that actually creates a better ecosystem around it than what it is now. Trying to bring nature into offices in high-rise. Measuring afterwards, so the last step, This is City Hall of Venlo, where universities have measured in the 5 years after realization of the project, and it led to 50% less health-related complaints with the people. These are things that new kind of designs can do. And people, blind people we spoke to, they recognize the building because it sounds like birds. Every time they know how to navigate to the building because there's more bird sounds in this building. This whole facade is full with 25, 30 species of birds. Every step, every project, the effort to get to a certain level. Just to be clear, we've never built a building completely positive footprint. It's still impossible, especially on the material level. But we managed to build buildings that purify air. We've managed to make buildings, all the other flows, we've managed to get positive. And not in every building, all of them at the same time, but every project, it becomes less effort. And our challenge now in the upcoming years is to make sure that the costs go down to achieve this, because it is still more expensive. We're developing tools to get a grip on it in an earlier stage, so it really becomes a spatial exercise as well, not a technical. So straight away in the beginning, knowing how much landscaping, this is the footprint of a building on the top, how much, before even other technical advisors are there, we're already calculating we need probably so much PV, we need probably so much landscaping and trees to compensate for the small little nature that we're going to take away from this site. It's built on a parking field. We need so much green facade or so much water for washing the air after using it. And this becomes a spatial exercise. We're structuring all the choices that will happen in every design project, from best to worst choice in the sketch design phase. Then if you manage to convince them that they need wooden construction, for example, then not all wooden constructions are equal quality. The best is to do it with dowel laminated timber, so no glue in there. If you cannot make that happen, then CLT. And these kind of choices we try to structure as much as possible. And then when you get deeper and deeper, you go into, if you cannot prevent any concrete, then okay, what kind of reinforcement do you need? So all these kind of things we're structuring now. This is how we track our steps in the checklist. So if we didn't do certain things because we couldn't convince the client to do them now, to hire already an ecologist, for example, in the early stage, we track that. Next phase, we're going to do that. We're developing a better way to do the baseline. It's one of the most important things. If you want to have a positive footprint, you need to, for example, biodiversity, you need to know the biodiversity on that spot now. Exactly. You need to know the quality of the soil. You need to know the quality of the water. And that we're measuring, and we can calculate quite easily now, of better and better, what we will need to have a positive footprint. And we're finding more and more options for every of the 49 places in this matrix. That is kind of the core of the method, to be able to, in the end, measure the performance and be able to say afterwards if we made it or not, the positive footprint. But, like I said, we can purify air, we can purify water, we can generate more electricity than we use, of energy than we use. We can even purify the bottom and the soil and create more biodiversity. But building materials and all the materials that we need and all the life cycle damage that is being done out of sight, far away, is really difficult to get a grip on. And for that, at this moment, we are focusing really much on local reuse, bio-based, of course. All these things, of course, make sense. But for the debate later on, I would like to add one thing, and that's a question, because we're looking at these material flows now, and one of our conclusions so far is that we cannot do without any compensation now. If we want to build with a positive footprint, we have to compensate for the damage we're doing. But how do you compensate? Do you only compensate the CO2? Because if you look, this part of the method, if you look at, now let's say we take the MKI indicators, the damage you're doing is also you're putting toxicity in freshwater, toxicity in the sea during the transport of metals, of concrete, and these kind of things. You create smog. CO2 is just, what is it? Number 3, I think. It has an effect also on number 6. But that's CO2. All these toxicities that we put in the soil and in the air and in the water, what is the biggest harm to us? And I think CO2, I don't want to say that CO2 is not of carbon, is not important, but it has a danger that we're so focused on the CO2 that in certain materials we choose for low embodied carbon due to the methods that we're all using, but it has a huge toxicity on different levels. And is that then the right choice? So I just want to open that for the debate later on. And that was my story so far.
Thanks, Vincent. And we'll come back to the question, is CO2 really the biggest problem? But first we will dive into some more perspectives on climate positive materials. And the first one we are starting with is a guest who is designing circular, non-toxic, carbon negative building materials, working together with big brands such as H&M, Audi, BMW. They are, in their own words, in business to reverse climate change. Please welcome to the stage the CEO and co-founder of Moderator, Allison Dring.
This one. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. I came here from Berlin. I love being in Rotterdam. I haven't seen very much. Hopefully tomorrow. That's me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a startup called Moderator. We are based in Berlin. We're working on carbon negative materials. I think you're going to hear a lot about carbon negative this evening. But just to clarify, in our process, carbon negative means we're taking more CO2 out of the air than we produce in making our material. And we're focusing on problems like these. Right now we have a global system where you have materials deep in supply chains that are creating emissions that are very hard to abate. We need materials to do a lot of things. And it is our position that materials can play a role in reversing the climate crisis. I don't think I have to state this out loud. I think in this room, we're all familiar with embodied carbon. But I would just like to think a little bit about this 11%. So this is, of course, the carbon emissions attached to materials that go into buildings. So this is the upfront carbon. This is a big amount, and the reason why it's called upfront carbon is because there's urgency in this carbon. This is the carbon that if we don't make the right decisions around materials right now, this is the carbon that will go into our materials like a gut punch right away, as soon as the door is open. And this is a problem. The operational emissions, we have more time to abate these. With the material emissions, we need mitigation and we need it fast. So Moderator is proposing a solution for exactly this situation and across all manufactured goods. We're creating a carbon negative material. What we're doing is our technology focuses on a biochar-based functionalized filler. It's a powder. It goes into plastic composites. Essentially, we make a plastic compound using our technology. This is a material that's carbon negative to manufacture, so we're actually removing more CO2 than we produce in making our material in granular form. It's energy net positive, so we're collecting energy at the end of our value chain. And we can drop it into manufacturing lines that are existing right now. So we can injection mold with it, we can compression mold, we can make all kinds of plastics and composite product use cases. So here's an example of where it goes. This is a carbon negative facade using our material. This is Audi's flagship dealership in Munich. Audi used to use this aluminum panel facade. You may have seen it around the world. They came to us because they were not getting building permissions for environmental reasons to use that material in municipalities in Germany. So they were facing a challenge to their license to operate because of the material. We know that emissions, embodied emissions, aren't counted accurately. And they certainly weren't counted accurately when Audi came to us, but they knew there was a problem attached to the material, their incumbent material globally. What we did was take that panel out of their building typology and we replaced it with our material in the form of a panel. And we went from having a high emitting aluminum facade to a carbon negative facade. And we're working across lots of use cases. So this is a material that's flexible, it's plastic. We don't make the plastic, we compound with plastics, we're agnostic that way. Our filler can work with recycled, it can work with biopolymers, we can work with CO2 to polymer. We work across these verticals. These are our commercialization strategies. We work on consumer goods, we work in automotive, and we work in the built environment. Our target use cases are long life products. We tend to target our filler for circular pools of materials. So if a supply chain has a proprietary pool of plastic that they're circulating, this is a good opportunity to store carbon in it. We also know in this room that a building product with a lifetime of 20, 50, 100 years is also a good place to store carbon. This is how it works. This is our value chain. Our carbon capture method is biomass. So we are doing a biochar process. I don't know if everybody's familiar with what biochar is. I'll just give you the short version. Biomass is capturing carbon through photosynthesis. So you can think of a forest as a carbon sink. What we're doing is taking wood waste. So this is very downstream waste, small chip sizes, not high competition, so we're not even talking about the chip sizes that go into CLTs, but smaller. This material is a carbon sink. What typically happens at sawmills is this material is either going to decompose, it's going to be landfilled, or it's going to be burned. And in those cases, that CO2 that's trapped in the material is going to go right back into the atmosphere. So biomass is actually a circular, carbon neutral material. What we do is take it into biochar. When we do this, it's a pyrolysis step. We put it in an oven with a low oxygen, high temperature. We convert it to charcoal. In that step, you have a lock between CO2 and carbon. We get a material that's pretty much elemental carbon. This isn't a process that we've invented. This is a verified carbon sequestration strategy. What we do is focus on the next step. Right now, you can't take biochar and just put it into a material. So what we do is homogenize it. We functionalize it, and we get it into an industrial filler that can work within a polymer matrix. We then sell the material in a granular form. So like I said, we can injection mold it, or we can compression mold it. We can make all kinds of things with it, since this is sitting here. This is a panel that Willem brought. Thank you. We sell it straight into manufacturing production lines. They're thermoforming, they're making products. Those products are becoming carbon sinks. So as you used to think about, or we still do think about forests as carbon sinks, we are looking at it as, let's use our manufactured goods as carbon sinks. At the end of life of that product, we have two options. It's a fully circular material. You can grind it down mechanically, recycle it into something else. You can also use pyrolysis to chemically recycle. And this is an important step because you can actually separate the plastics, recirculate them in an infinite loop. You can take the chars and you can put it in the ground. And this is essentially the end of the carbon cycle. So we have a material that can sequester a net 2 tons of CO2 for every ton we produce. That's the carbon removal aspect of it. We can also replace or avoid the emissions of other materials. So in the case of Audi's facade, we could actually take the 11 tons of CO2, per ton of that material off of their books and give them a net negative 2 tons of CO2 to play with. We're just getting started. This is a technology that can scale to a global level. Right now we sell in compounds. So we take our filler and we put it in plastic and we sell into the same way that a plastic would be sold or produced. In the near future, we'll be selling our filler at much higher volumes into supply chains. We'll be working with much bigger plastic pools. And in the future, we'll sell our processing technology. In that case, we'll sell it back to the biomass companies. These are companies that are sitting on global waste streams that can then valorize it into a functional filler. So they can actually create a carbon filler at hundreds of thousands of tons. And I'm just gonna, carbon removal, I think as we're gonna hear a little more about tonight, it's a really powerful tool. And I just wanna leave you with one scenario. Right now, our world is producing 400 million tons of plastics every year. And this is, I think the estimates right now are by the end of the century, we'll be producing a gigaton. So the demand is actually going up as our population increases. If we were to add just 10% of biogenic carbon to this pool, right now we would permanently remove 120 million tons net removal from the atmosphere, and we could prevent another 80 million tons of CO2 from being emitted. 200 million tons of saved CO2, just with 10%. This is just one material stock. There are many others. And I would just like to put out there that carbon removal is a really powerful tool, and as we start to enter a circular economy, the key is not the carbon capture, it's putting the carbon to work. Thank you.
Allison Dring, thanks. Please hold on to your questions until we open up to you guys in the audience. First, it's an honor to introduce our next guest. You can call him a storyteller, an activist, a presenter, a theater maker, a lobbyist, an entrepreneur, connector. What else? He is all that, and he's trying to make, in every role, the world a better place. Tonight, he is here to talk about Biobased Creations. Please welcome to the stage, Lucas de Man.
Thank you. So we have this huge stage and everybody has to walk to this little corner over here. Yes. Hello. Hi everyone. I'm not an architect, so I'm not wearing black. I'm an artist, so that means that I have a lot of friends that work together with me, and that means that we have no idea what we're doing, so we come into great projects and have no social life. That's basically our thing. In 2019, we created this pavilion together with a lot of beautiful partners because we were working for a bank. We were working for a bank because we hate banks. So they asked us, do you want to work with us as artists? So we said no, and then they said, cool, so do. And we said, okay, but we want to do whatever we want. And they said no, so we said we're going to leave. And then they said, okay, come back. And then we worked with them for 1 year. And there we understood, this is still the bank, and there we understood that there's a whole new world coming, because what we didn't realize, there are also interesting people working at banks. You know, you have the assholes, but they also work in your world and in my world. But you also have a few people that are very smart and looking forward. And they told us, like, there's this new thing coming, and they explained the whole world to us and one night. And then we realized we have to think differently when it comes to building. And we discovered mycelium in 2017. Not us, many people discovered them for like 4 billion years or something, but we also did. And mycelium is when you combine mushroom with, for example, lisdodder, cattail, or with hemp, or with other stuff that is dry and very good in fibers. And then you can create beautiful materials that is super light and has 1,000 good qualities, right? So nobody likes it. So we said, why don't we create a whole pavilion out of it? Because now it was just being used by one guy who wanted to impress his father with his packaging company in the US. This is a true story. Right? His father said, you have to take over the company. He says, no. And his father says, yes. And you're ashamed to me. You know how it goes, father and son. And then he went to study biology. And then he came, I'm going to take over the company if I can do it with mycelium. His father said, I hate you. And now he's a very successful entrepreneur. So, but he only used it, you know, because an old economy only allows a little bit of innovation. And we are not in the economy because we're artists. We know we have no money at all, so it doesn't matter. So we said, why don't we create a whole building out of it? And everybody says it's impossible, and then we did. And then a lot of people came to us and said, this is so cool. We also work with bio-based materials, which means they come from the ground, they grow, they store carbon. You know, you don't have to burn them or combine them with plastics or any of those crazy things. You can really just use them as plants, and then when they're done, you can put them in the ground again. Right? So we said, this is so cool, how many of those products are there? And then it turned out hundreds of products, materials that you can make from nature. You can build with, right? You can do more than just building, right? You can create all worlds. So we made this house together with 100 amazing people, because again, I know nothing, but I stumble upon projects. So we created a house with 100 bio-based materials. Maybe you visited, maybe not, but it was also at the Floriade and at the Dutch Design Week, and now it's going to Belgium, which is a country you used to have and then lost. So for those who didn't visit it yet, please come and visit it. It's in Antwerp. Actually, it's not in Antwerp. They call it Antwerp, but it's a half-an-hour drive from Antwerp. But still, that's how Antwerp people think. It's in Antwerp. And it's there from the 31st of March till the end of November, right? And what we did is we worked with hundreds of people to create a house that is completely made out of bio-based materials. And then I was asked to speak at many conferences. White old men inviting me to tell a story, to say how the world is going to change. So I did. I asked a lot of money for it. I didn't get it. Right? Like tonight, I'm here for free because I have no social life. It's okay. Right? Neither do you because you're here. So we created this house, and then something I noticed, and this is very important. I noticed that nobody really wants to change nothing. Sustainability means to sustain. To continue what you're doing. The world is run by people above 50, most of them white, most of them male or male-ish, let's say, right? Those in power make money by doing something that they work a long time on, and they made it pure, and they made it specific, and they make money. And money means status, and status means not a lonely childhood anymore. This is how the world works. It's okay, right? So what people want to do now, because the resources are going out, or because there's new legislations and rules, some of those components in their very specific system, they can't do anymore, right? So they say, damn it, I want to continue it. So what do I have to change? And then there are some innovative, naive people that saying, you cannot do concrete anymore, you have to do wood. And they say, okay, then I do wood, right? As long as I can continue everything that I'm doing, I'm okay. Right? Don't use plastics, but if you use plastics, use a little bit burned wood, and then you can continue using plastics. No problem. You can continue it. And understand that you do it, but it's bullshit. Right? Because you don't have to use plastics. You don't have to use concrete. Right? You can change the whole system, but it's very difficult. Because that means that old people have to admit that they were wrong. This is a pause for dramatic purposes. People cannot admit that they were wrong. People want to admit that they found the truth. So I'm coming to all these conferences, and I'm meeting the same white men that used to fuck up the world, now saying, I found the solution. I have a 7-step program how to do things right, you know. I know how to do things. And they try to convince us, the same white people that are in charge, how to do things differently. And nobody really wants to, right? They all want to, you know, get loved by their father. And they will never. Because that's the way fathers go, you know. They love you a little bit or too much, and you think your father is a loser. And it's also a problem, right? So sustainability is a hoax. We just want to sustain, and now that green is hip, we do a little bit of green. But if you really go green, if you really think through what bio-based materials would be, it's not just about carbon, right? It's about a complete new ecosystem. Completely new. It means that the farmers are growing. That means that builders and architects talking to farmers. It's not happening yet. They don't know how to talk to each other. They are afraid of each other. It means that we have to think about soil. It means that we have to learn about nature. It means that all these different disciplines have to work together and think of a completely new ecosystem. If we are ready to do that, then we can create a huge, interesting world. The question is, are we willing to? Right? So the latest project that we stumbled upon is called Possible Landscapes. We actually send this to, there's in Osaka, it's in Japan, there's the World Expo in 2025, and the Netherlands convinced themselves to partake in that, and they asked for pavilions. So we said, okay, let's send one in. So this is our proposal. It's a pavilion. It looks like a garden, but it's a building, and it's completely made out of nature, 100% nature, right? So that means that instead of using tiles or stones, you actually grow beacons that you can actually put plants and soil in. So we are carrying the nature, and we have the sea, and we have hemp, and we have seaweed, and we have mycelium, and actually the building stones that are carrying the plants are made from the nature that are carrying the plants. So for example, we 3D print seaweed and then we grow seaweed in it. We 3D print hennep stones and then we grow hennep in it. We 3D print mycelium and we grow forest or trees in it. So the whole building is made from nature. Why? Because we believe that it's not just putting some hemp between two layers of plastic and then putting stones and saying we did a good job, because that's bullshit, of course. It's changing the complete way of thinking how we're going to build, how we're going to tell the story. It's farmers and nature believers and builders and architects and everybody working together. Will we do it? We have no idea. We're here on Monday, right? And if they don't let us go to Osaka, even the better. We're going to do it in the Netherlands and do it still here together with those who want to. Because we believe if you create something beautiful together, even when the result is amazing, the most interesting thing is that you work together on something you've never done before. And this is the most important thing of sustainability. People that don't know each other, from different worlds coming together, doing something together they've never done before and learning from it. That's creating a new ecosystem. And then you can sustain being on this planet. Because if nature had a vote, it would vote us out. It would say, gone with those skinny white people, right? And leave the rest, right? But we want to stay, sustain ourselves. So we want to save nature just enough that we can stay. That is sustainability. So let's at least try to do something new and have fun with it. Thank you.
And now the task for Wouter Moorlag to top that. He is the cluster manager Building Innovation at TNO, and he helps suppliers, contractors, engineers and governments by combining in-depth scientific knowledge in the field of sustainability, safety, digitalization and industrialization. Please welcome to the stage, Wouter Moorlag.
Thank you so much. So it's not so difficult to top Lucas, so I don't worry about that. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm an architect, educated, but I'm not sure. I don't work as an architect anymore, so I don't wear black. Let's go to my presentation. This is me, and I work for TNO. And TNO is the Netherlands Organization for Applied Scientific Research. So on one hand, we work with the latest scientific insights, and we try to connect that to innovations. So we work as innovation partner for engineers, for contractors, for manufacturers, architects, as well as governments. I understood that I just have a couple of minutes, and so I'm not sure how much time I have. Anyway. I work in Delft. I'm educated as an architect. I also studied some business administration. We are with 200 people in Delft working on different topics like energy, digitalization in the built environment, and also building some materials. So I will cut my story in two. One part is about concrete, and the other part is about wood. So I was just wondering, after your story, Lucas, are there still people who work with concrete? Please raise your hand. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, it's still widely used, unfortunately, I would say. I will just tell about what we can do with waste. So, waste is still an important topic. So reuse secondary resources. So I'm going to talk about waste from some concrete and waste from some wood. And we still have quite a lot of waste. As you can see in this overview, currently only 5% of the waste that comes from some demolition, from concrete and from some brickwork is being reused in concrete some structures. And that's really incredible low, because waste is still very perfectly capable of activating some material. So meaning it can activate, it can work as a binder, it can replace some cement and reduce the CO2 some footprint. So it makes sense to use this some waste. And it's not so difficult to reduce CO2 footprint by maybe 30, 40, 50%, and that actually depends on the application. But currently we don't do that. We only use 5% back in concrete structures. And that's a pity, because we are still dependent on virgin materials, and also with the high CO2 footprint. So why is that? And actually we put all the waste under the ground, under our roads, so a very low-end application. And of course it has to do with the high variation we see in these secondary resources. Our whole construction industry, the concrete industry, is working with just some limited number of ingredients. And they already know for, I don't know, 50 or 60 years what the exact performance is of these ingredients into concrete structures. So our engineers work with rules of thumb, with engineering models, so they can make some calculations based on virgin materials. But as soon as we're going to use secondary materials with a really high variation in size, in type, we don't know anymore what to do. So that's a big issue. We cannot cope with the high variety that the secondary resource provide us with. So at TNO we try to help these engineers and try to help the concrete manufacturers. And what you also see is that we can not only calculate, but also our building codes, our way we actually build, our processes are all designed around virgin materials. So imagine that. We want to go to a circular economy, but we still think in a linear manner, and that's a pity. So what we need to do is take these materials seriously. So it's not about the design, it's not about the engineering, it's about the resources that we have. And that's what we call at TNO resource-based engineering. So the resource is the starting point for everything that you as architects, as engineers, as contractors do. And that's quite difficult, because we actually have to know exactly how these resources behave in concrete structures. So some material science, physicists, some chemists, that are the type of people that we need in order to predict how these some materials behave in some concrete structures. Because of course we want these structures to be safe, and that's important because we cannot say anything about that as the way we work now. So we have developed an innovation program around this. It's called resource-based engineering. One of the projects in it is resource-based multi-criteria design optimization. What a word! And it helps on one hand, and it's actually some models and a chain. So it incorporates some materials, some models, engineering models, and helps architects with the optimization of it in some buildings. I don't have a lot of time now to explain some more about it, but it's just for you to realize if you really want to take the circular economy seriously, and we really want to make use of the potential of the secondary materials that we have to think differently. And that's actually also the case with bio-based materials. So that's the second part of my story. We don't know actually how to use bio-based materials, how to calculate them. If we want to know if you use the MPG to calculate what the environmental impact is of bio-based materials, it's not actually suited for it. So it's really incredible that after some look at some story, we actually don't know how to use it. We don't know what the engineering is. We don't know how to calculate it. Our legislation is not built around some bio-based materials. So if you want to reach our climate goals in, I don't know how much time we have left, some 5 years, I think, then we really have to act. And one way of doing that is look at waste again. I was really shocked when I was here at GP Groot in Noord-Holland to see literally mountains of waste wood. This is just a picture that I took. And this wood is very much able to be reused in new buildings and products, but we don't do this. We burn this because that's called biomass, and that's really incredible because it's a valuable resource. So I was quite shocked. The other disadvantage of burning it is that the advantage of bio-based materials is that they store carbon. They act as natural carbon sink, as long as they are in the cycle. So if you're going to burn wood, it will release the CO2, and your advantage is gone. So it's important to look at reuse of wood. So that's why we already run an innovation program for a couple of years around some reuse of some wood, and that's to prove that the end of life scenario for wood is not burning it after 50 years, but that it can be reused over and over and over again. So this is a project that we started at the end of last year. We gathered a group of some companies that we often work with, and we joined the hackathon in Rotterdam here, organized by Blue City, and the goal was to make CLT out of waste wood. And in this case, we used pellets. So not the type of pellets like the Euro pellets that you can reuse. These pellets come in from China, and the quality of the wood is really bad. So they are waiting here at Renewey to be burnt, and that's a pity. So our goal was, can we make CLT out of these pellets? And the idea is, if we can make CLT out of pellets, then we can also make CLT out of other bio-based waste streams. So I just took a couple of pictures. This is gathering the pellets. We had to remove all the nails and the screws. That's a very important step if you want to reuse wood. Then we finger jointed into long planks. It's just some simple steps basically. Glued it together, layer by layer, used the press, cut it in the right sizes, and in the end we got different types of CLT, and we built some volley with it. So this is designed by urban climate architects from Delft, and it proves that it can actually be done. So we are currently in the process of testing these CLT made out of waste in our lab in Delft. Our lab is, by the way, designed by Group A Architect. It's a very comfortable building, I have to admit. And this is actually the CLT. So if you have time after my talk, please come forward. There you can have a look. There you can also see there's still some space in between some panels, so there's still room for improvement. But I can already let you know that some performance of the CLT is really high. So both on some structure, some durability. The MKI score is like half of some regular CLT, so it's quite some impactful also. And the next step in the development is to work with our partners on the automation of the recycling process. If we really want to do this on a large scale, we can't going not to remove the nails by hand, but we need some automation for that. So we're developing a kind of CT, scanner for wood to identify where the metal is in the wood. And together with the Hogeschool van Amsterdam, we develop a robot to actually remove this. And this is also funded by the recycling companies that we are working with. And the last step is, of course, application in a real building. So we already identified the first project. So I'm really happy that this innovation is actually going quite fast. We have the waste available, so we can also have quite a large impact also on the short term. I think that's it for now. Thank you very much for listening. And if you want to know more about these projects, or if you want to join one of our innovation programs, feel free to approach me. We are there for you. We are a public research institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And the last perspective before we open up to you guys is for somebody who's going to answer the question whether there is a way to work with concrete and be sustainable at the same time. He's the head of project development at the Bern-based company Neustark. Please welcome to the stage Daniel Egger.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Willem told us that there is a job to be done. We need to become net zero by 2050. So this means 27 years to reduce CO2 emissions, which have been growing over centuries. That's not much. That's not a lot of time. So we need to find solutions which are existing today. We cannot rely on solutions which are still in the lab, promising a future application in 10, 15 years. We need to have something in our hand which is working right now. To make it even a bit more complicated, we also know that there are technologies, there are industries, if we like it or not, we cannot decarbonize, which will also emit CO2 in the future. So we do not only need to find solutions which are reducing CO2, we need to find solutions which are storing CO2, which are removing CO2 permanently out of the air. But we're here to speak about solutions, to speak about materials. But we shouldn't only speak about materials which are new, which we're bringing to life. We also need to speak about materials which are already in use, like concrete. And concrete is the second biggest waste stream we have on Earth. As the biggest one, we consider CO2. The good thing of these two waste streams is that they like each other. Concrete can store quite a bit of CO2, up to 1 billion tons per year, so this is about 10% of the CO2 we need to remove by 2050. We at Neustark, we're building machines which are doing exactly that, which are storing CO2, hundreds, some even thousands of tons every year. And the good thing is that these materials can be recycled, can be brought back into use, as in this example where our partners could deliver carbonated concrete to build a new building in Amsterdam. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me here.
Daniel, can I ask you to join us for the discussion? We're going to open up to the audience, so you can take a table, and everyone can. And thanks, Daniel, for being the only one who stick to the time limit of just a couple of minutes, because that's what he did. Some microphones have dropped out, so you have to share a little bit. We have brought you some perspectives. I can imagine you are full of questions. Who of you is ready to ask the first one? We want to get wasted at the bar, that's possible as well. Yes. Always take some time to get started. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
My name is Rabaz, I'm an architect. My question actually for all of you. Do you have any numbers that can prove that we are saving the planet, or we are wasting the planet, or we are beside the ozone and those numbers? But for example, for Lucas, do you have any number that telling us that you are saving the world? And Vincent, do you make any calculation to that telling us that you are really with these 7 steps really saving the building industry. And for the plastic one, it sounds almost like magic, actually.
Okay, so the question is real. The storytelling is perfectly in place. Where's your science behind it? Let me start with Luca.
Thank you for your question. First of all, I never said I'm saving the world. I'm actually trying to die on time. So that is my thing. I don't make children, so I think I'm saving the world. I mean, doing the world a big favor in any ways. But yeah, if it comes to carbon, for example, the Mycelium Pavilion was being calculated by an independent company, and it was 10 tons CO2 negative. So you make actually a building that is making actually taking CO2 out of the air. But for me, I don't care, really. I think it's for the building and it's for the regulations very important. What I think by saving is that we work with a lot of people that work together on something that gives them energy, so they don't have a divorce, so they don't kill each other, they don't kill themselves. I think I saved 4 marriages during these projects, so yeah, I'm doing a good job.
Are you kidding only halfly, or are you kidding entirely, or?
I'm a Belgian, so we kid completely. Mm-hmm. It's a whole thing. It doesn't matter. But no, it's true. I think we overestimate ourselves by saving the world. So we don't save the world. That is my answer. I thought I made that clear. But
what would you say is? How would you define your role in if there is anything about saving the world? What will be your role in it? What
Not to save it.
Okay.
Look, the world does not want to be saved, right? The world wants to continue and get rid of us. We want to save ourselves. So don't say you're saving the world. Admit that you're saving yourselves, right? So all of us here are saving our businesses and our asses and everything else. But that's why I said at the end of my presentation, you can at least try to do it together, and at least try to do it more humble, and at least try to have fun with it, right? So somehow it becomes so super serious or so super arrogant of people saying, if we do this, then the world will be amazing. And it's not true. The world is a shitty place, and a few people could have control, and a few people are better than the rest, and the rest is average, and a lot of people can't come by. And we're gonna save them and help them, and we don't. We never do. We only save ourselves. But you can create beautiful things that are more equal, that are more honest, if you stay a little bit humble, use more humor, right? And don't use words like saving the world.
Vincent, are you in any way saving the world with your 7 Steps program?
I'm saving myself.
Dare to say it.
In the book, introduction, this is my exact position. I'm saving myself. I gave myself and my company 5 years to keep on doing what we're doing, to find a way to keep on doing what we're doing. Because if we keep on making buildings that make the world a worse place, we should stop it. Big part, I didn't show it in the presentation, big part about the whole method is being honest about what you're doing. If you cannot make a building with a positive impact if you clear a forest and try to make something there. If you start with an old parking place, which is polluted ground and whatever, and you're gonna make a building there out of bio-based material with reused concrete, whatever, you can maybe get close. Maybe not saving the world, but finding at least a way to make beautiful things without, and honestly, without keeping the guilt for yourself of doing something that's actually nice to do, making a nice piece of art or making a nice building that's actually destroying the world a bit further. It's all about doing less as well. We didn't talk about that much, but a big part of the method is as well, do less. And actually, one of the underlying motives that I have with this method is I'm trying to find ways to keep on doing roughly architect-like stuff without building. That would be nice. We don't have to build to make our money, to make nice stuff, but find answers that lead much less material, but still can make people happy.
Yeah.
So I think our position is quite
just to get
similar.
our mission, our missions aligned. Would your mission be to save the world? What would your mission be with the company and the product you work on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we use that language. I agree. I think that this humility in front of this problem is really necessary, and I think that's the The role of a lot of climate companies like ours is to agitate. There aren't enough climate companies in the world. It's not enough to feel like you have an actual position or an arrogance. You're always the underdog in the room. And we've just accepted that, and we charge on. We have a mission to reverse the climate crisis. We don't see any other point. Our business it exists to do this. If we take all of the CO2 out of the air, I will happily go out of business. So I have no problem lining up behind that. I think when it comes to the science, and we are big supporters of science, we do measure our impact. It's not an easy place to measure impact right now. You might know this, the carbon credit situation is the Wild West. But we do sign up. We try to pin things down as much as we can. We have life cycle assessments on all of our materials. We generate in our biochar filler 3 tons of CO2 per ton net negative, and it depends on how much we would put into what material. So there's a lot of ways to implement it, and I think in terms of like feeling that as a company, you know, we're a pea in the ocean right now. So this is, all I can hope is that we can make our corner start to work, and that the very seed of what we're working on, this technology, can scale. We're not gonna craft our way out of this climate crisis. We're not gonna make one building at a time. We can build one building at a time with a climate positive intention, but it's our position that if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do something that can take on the existing giant metabolic machines that we've built as a culture, oil and gas, all of it that's already built, and get it moving toward another goal, not ignore that it exists.
Did you discuss internally whether you wanted to work for the brands you are working with, for example, Audi and BMW, and why did you say yes in the end?
We're looking for companies that are first movers and on the playing field with us. If they're not on the playing field, then we're not working with them. And we're not trying to take a moral standpoint on every company. If they're signed up to do something positive, then we're working with them.
Yeah, whatever they're doing on the side.
You know, I think that's, we're not watchdogs for what companies are doing across their portfolios. I think if we did that, we'd be in a very, very small corner.
Yeah, yeah. Wouter, you wanted to react? Can you take the microphone of Lucas?
Yeah, because I think that's a very valid question. Like, can we actually support these some claims by your numbers? And I was impressed by some of Frank's some story about that you were able to reduce the number of health complaints by 50% in one of the buildings you told us, and that's very interesting. But if you think about it, what are the causes? Is it the daylight? Are it the plants? Is it the wood? Maybe they went from a 40-hour work week to a 36-hour work week. So that's the difficulty if you talk about evidence-based design, to really think about, okay, as architects, what are the controls and what is the effect, and also the interaction between all these variables. We are actually not yet there at all to say anything about this. I have a bit of experience in some healthcare design. Evidence-based is already there, quite common since the 80s, especially from the States. But still, we are still not able to really grasp how we can take this into our advantage.
Okay, Vincent.
Yeah, so the research behind it done by university, not a little evaluation by us, and they really looked into what was caused by the building, what was caused by other stuff. So you can download it. Probably it's University of Maastricht and Aachen together for the health-related stuff. But reacting to what you're mentioning and the question of Rebas is, it's also a bit dangerous, I think, in this whole debate, to be focused so much on the evidence base, because we know what is good. We know since the 70s what is good. In the 70s, artists were doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah,
the research you showed from the concrete, the same building, we have 80% reused concrete in there. People
in the end, indeed, the municipality didn't know how to calculate with it. The problem is how we demolish our buildings. It's not the calculation. It's not. All this is possible, and we know that it's in Japan. They do it for years already, for decades. All this stuff has been known. The problem is speed, and we are here all relatively same, 40-ish, probably. Hope I don't insult anybody.
I'm 52,
but the generation
okay, yeah.
of the 70s. The generation that was working as an architect or artist or scientist in the 70s, they knew everything. But then 50 years long, we forgot Reagan, Thatcher, everything. We forgot what we were doing.
No. This is important. We did not forget. We chose not to.
We chose not to.
But this is a very important distinction. Of course, you can say no to BMW or Audi or all these things. You can say no if you want, but it means what is your value proposition?
Nope.
So you're now referring to the 70s as if it was a long time ago. You can refer to the Greeks. You can refer to the beginning of mankind, right? Everything we do synthetically, we can do biological. We can. Right? So it's not a problem of how are we going to do it. We know everything already, it's possible. It's a thing of value. And this is the bigger discussion. If we don't want, we don't do. Why don't we have the regulations? Because we don't want. Right? It's a political and it's an economical thing. It's a power move. So the moment we decide we want to do it differently, we can. So we can talk here about all our fancy ideas and materials, and they are amazing, by the way, what is possible. But if we don't want to change, it's not going to happen. And the good thing of the climate crisis that we have now is that we have to change. So we get spanked on our asses, what we didn't have in the 70s, unless, privately and then with consent. But still, we get like collectively spanked on our asses, and not in a good way. And that's the great thing about this time. The issue is, are we willing, especially the young people here, are we willing to really take up that glove and don't just go for money and quick gain and status? Are we willing to really do something?
Completely agree.
Yeah.
That's the whole issue.
Yeah.
But I think there's exactly the challenge. Of course, we know in which situation we are, and we know what we do. We know it's 50 years. I mean, I really love to live on this planet, and I hope you do as well. But why don't we do that? I mean, if you look at voluntary measures, how many percentage do you think are taking voluntary measures to do the right thing? Is it 2%, 10%, 50%, 60%, 80%? It's a really small minority, and that's the issue. And it's not that we do not know what to do, and the only thing how we can solve that is innovation and regulation. And that's, I mean, if you like it or not, but that's reality. And it's, I mean, we can have huge visions, but we are living in reality, and we need to find solutions which are working.
Yeah.
And that's the point.
So just then for you, right? You work for a concrete company, you know the solution, but you still choose to work for a concrete company, and your presentation was, we reuse it, so we're doing good. Do you really believe this?
Look, I mean, we do not have a silver bullet.
No, but do you believe this? Because you're proud to say, I work for a concrete company, and we reuse it, and so we're doing good. And that's your whole pitch. And then you're saying, we know how to change it, but you choose to work for it. You can also say, I don't want to work for a concrete company because it's not right to do so. I want to do it with my intelligence, and you are super smart. I want to do something other. No, you say, I'm going to stay with the company, and the fact that we reuse it, we're good, doing good.
Look, that's exactly what I mean. It's, I mean, I can say, I want to have a world without concrete, but this is not realistic. We need to live in reality. And I mean, you're living in Central Europe. But that's not the world. You cannot say, I mean, I have huge visions. I can make a super sustainable pavilion. Just by the way, I really love what you did. So no doubts about that. But we need to find solutions which are working for the entire world. And by the way, I'm not working for a concrete company. I'm working for a concrete recycling company, which is a huge difference, but this we can discuss with a beer. And the point is that we need to find solutions which are working for the world.
Yeah, so
we need your visions, no doubt about that.
So this is, I remember this talk I had with my father, right? Be realistic, Lucas. You cannot become an artist, you have to make money, and artists don't make money. Be realistic, become a lawyer. And then I said, I said to my father, fuck you, because that's what you do as a young guy, and I'm making money being an artist, so I'm very sorry, but saying be realistic for the world is just,
I have a question for you then. I have a question for you. So I'm working for some companies who are trying to save the world with hydrogen stuff and not close by. if we want to change the whole energy system, we're not now talking about the building industry, they need to transform, we need energy, right? Do we need energy?
Yeah.
We need an energy grid.
Yeah.
So they make machines that will power the future. They need factories, and they cannot go into existing factories. And the factories that we need to build for them, we tried everything. We cannot find bio-based materials to support the structures and everything they need. They cannot go into existing buildings because they're just not there at the right spots. Should we not build for them?
But this is reversing the value question. Because, no. Look, now you're saying, I studied philosophy, so you're giving me a philosophical dilemma.
Yeah.
We want to change the world for the better.
I forgot that in my introduction, by the way.
Sorry.
Also philosopher.
So you say we try to do one good, but then we have to do a bad, and we also want to do the whole good. And then you ask me to choose. I'm not the one to choose, you choose. What I'm saying is you can choose to work with plastics or not. You can choose to work with BMW. You can choose to work at a concrete recycling company. You can choose what you choose, right? So if you choose to go for something, then stand by your values. If you then pretend to be good when you know that's not good and you say, but this is how it works, that means that you are supporting a system that you know is bad. And this is exactly what I'm trying to address. I always go to these conferences, you have people saying, we are doing good for the world, but we are realistic, we're making money with the big companies, but at least you're not the worst of the worst. And I'm going to say it's good if you can live with that. But if you're really realistic, which is just all bullshit, right? It's just continuing. So you can say to these companies, yes, I want to build these buildings, or you can choose as a company saying, sorry, we only work with people or only work with companies that we can build these buildings with. So it's about value. Choose your values and stand by them. That's it. Right? You can choose.
You live in a completely bio-based house?
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt.
I don't have money, so no, it's for the elite. So
I have a statement. I also worked on the Osaka building. The Osaka building has a concrete foundation. I think that's a very clear point.
What's your point there, Willem?
That we also use concrete.
Yeah, I don't say I'm against concrete. I'm just saying that you can choose who and what you work for. Yeah, because we always say, he says, are you changing the world or not? Are you doing,
Lucas, can I maybe ask a question that will shine maybe a different light? What kind of role do you see for companies like neustark or Made of Air in this transition we are in? Or do you think the tail of the transition is also something made up by these middle-aged white men?
No, I don't say it's made up. I say the realistic reason that I think that it's important in a climate discussion that we take out the saving part and the ethical good part. It's not good, right? It's not good. It's just business, and it's trying to be innovative and trying to go along the flow and go along the rules that we need now to actually survive. So I'm just trying to take out the ethical arrogance that we are portraying here. So is it better to recycle concrete than not recycle? Of course it's better. Are you good? No. Right? Is it great that you work with BMW and that you use plastic and then sort of burned wood? Probably, I don't know, I don't understand it, but I can imagine that it's better than not doing it, right? So if you say, is it good what I do? No, I will never say it's good, never, right? Don't use ethical. So that's the whole discussion. I'm working with ministries on the new laws of what we have to make, and it's always, they want to continue exactly the same and then change it a bit. And how can we actually change that dialogue to bigger without saying it's not realistic or not good and we cannot afford it? Because we can afford everything if we want.
So what I hear that is missing, sorry, very hard, is that the regulations and our way to calculate the materials is not up to say that they are strong enough, we can guarantee that they are stand for 50 years, and that's why we need to recycle concrete or the Made of Air project that is certificated. So and then you say, well, if you want to, we can do it because we have a shitload of farmers. They need to stop farming, but they do want to continue farming, but then they have to farm something else from mycelium. So should we kill regulations and calculations, or should we very quickly make them? So the regulations shouldn't be about reducing stuff, about making things possible. Or should we think about something else? Because we do have vernacular architecture in the world, where we did build with straw and clay and water, and the houses did stay. And then in those countries, we are also building now with concrete. So something went wrong at a certain point. We can go back. Then we don't need smart people to calculate anymore. Or the smart people need to calculate something else.
I think it's mentioned already. I don't know who mentioned it, but I think you mentioned regulation and innovation.
Yeah. So
I think in the end it's all about money. Uncles of mine were laughing at me for 15 years talking about sustainability, but when the gas prices went up, all of a sudden they were talking about PV panels on their roof when there was a birthday. It's all about money. Yeah. So high energy prices, high material prices, they're a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the regulations are coming because they have to.
And I think we live in one of the worst countries, regulation-wise, slowest countries, always waiting for the market to be ready before any regulation is being pushed through.
Wouter, how do you see it from the TNO perspective?
I agree. Yeah, legislation is always behind, so you're always dependent on the first group, the fast movers, the innovators, and they set the norm, and some legislation and some norms, some standards are always guided towards what is possible in the market. So you have to prove first that it is possible, and then some governments, but also some private sector. Don't forget, some companies can set their own some standards, so they don't have to follow.
But that's exactly what goes wrong in the Netherlands.
And that's
exactly what goes wrong.
What goes wrong?
Expecting from a government point of view that the consumer will choose for the most sustainable thing. The companies will set their own standards. That's the whole trick. They put the responsibility at the companies, at the consumers. That's the whole trick of not having to govern. You put responsibility somewhere else. As a government, you know what is bad, you know what is toxic, and you choose to not legislate it. It's really depressing. And we've been far ahead of any legislation in France. They were not even thinking about sustainability. In France, centrally organized, they are pushing so hard, legislation, faster, and the market is getting really nervous there in some parts. They're overtaking us like big time. And the Dutch government is just waiting until Europe puts a new decree, and then they can point at Europe. Okay, it's their fault. We have to do this and this to confirm to. It's really depressing.
One of the issues is that we always try in the Netherlands to integrate everything. So we have to have an integrated standard to calculate our environmental impact.
Excuse to not govern.
And the difficulty with that is that it's going very slow. So for example, take the embodied carbon. We really want to calculate it. We really want our clients, products, developers to say how much we should be able to use. So the government is developing separate legislation for that. But on the other hand, also people trying to say, no, we have to integrate it. The APG, the MPG, it should all be integrated into one fantastic model. And that's, of course, I like integration, don't get me wrong, but it just takes time, and we don't have this time anymore. So that's the issue.
Talking about time, we have 20 minutes left, and how much I'd like to complain about the Dutch government. We also need this 20 minutes to talk about how we...
The elections are soon, so I don't...
How can speed things up? Any questions in the audience for that?
Hey, I'm Bram Spruit from Interior Designer The Bender, just across the road. Saskia told about trying to find the narrative or the story, or how do we get this across. And I think the panel just concluded, rightfully so, that this story was already invented in the 60s or in the 70s. We tried to tell that story then, we stopped telling it, we're telling it now, again, maybe in different words, with a different urgency, but it's still the same story. So I would like to put it to the panel. We already know this story. And I think also listening to what has been said is that it might be about what do you stop telling. So what is the story that you stop telling? So do you stop telling the story about concrete? Do you stop making that building in a way that you can't fully support? You're saying, okay, I want to build this different building, I can get maybe 80% there. I'm not doing 80% anymore. If I can't reach 90, I'm not building it. So isn't it time to just say, this is where we draw the line, and maybe start like a bel me niet register for architects, like don't call me registry. If you don't meet these criteria, then don't pick up the phone, don't call me. And if that registry becomes big enough for a council member or a company to not know who to call anymore, then they have to call you in the end anyway, and then you get to make these decisions, and then you don't have to complain that it's not the government setting these regulations, forcing you to do it, but then you are bringing the client to you, and you're setting the regulations.
Who is an architect in the audience? A designer? Who of you would join the bel me niet register for... Just a couple of hands, but question is clear to you guys. Who wants to react? Daniel?
And I mean, I think this is exactly the point. And as said before, I mean, we have a job to be done. And me personally, I'm opportunistic. I do not care much. Of course, I do some, but I do not care much which solution we have to take that it works. If money rules the decisions, then we have to play this game. We need to find ways that it is more economical to act sustainably than not to do that. And if it's regulation which we need to put in place, we need to see that this regulation can be put in place. So there, I simply think we need to. We shouldn't have wishful thinking what should be right and what we should do. We simply need to think about which way is the most successful to reach our targets, because we do not have much time left. It's not about about dying beauty. It's about not to let our planet die.
I think the most important story that's not being told properly, and I don't know how to, but in the end is you don't become less happy if you have less stuff and if you can travel less, because what you're saying is right. I mean, in the end, we're all trying to keep on building the same amount of buildings. So all the architects and all the new architects that are graduating at the moment, that we all have something to do. But in the end, if we're not going to be fast enough, and you came here by car or train or whatever, at least probably not a bio-based transport that you came here with, living is having an impact. And there's always trade-offs that we need to make. But the story that every generation will live better than the next generation and that more material, more shit makes you more happy, that's the real story that needs to be killed.
Yeah, and the good thing, it's killing itself. Because the generation that is under 40 now is the first generation since the Declaration of Independence of the US in 1776, that is the first generation that will have less than their parents. So the good thing is, so yes, a bel me niet register, why not, if it's a choice. The good thing is there's a huge crisis. So the great news is that there's a huge crisis. So even if you don't want to change, you will have to. And yes, I believe that if you choose your values, the story we have to tell, it's not a whining story. We have to change everything. It's not going well with the world. Look at the numbers. And people go like, oh my God, more negative news. I think we should bring positive news. We should bring, oh my God, it's finally again an exciting time. It's going to be great. And we're going to have our farmers going to have a new perspective. Our builders are finally not the bad ones anymore. We're going to do great. You know, we're going to live together. You're going to have plants in your building. How cool is that? It's going to make you less stressful. Oh my God, no burnouts. If we really present it as that story, people go like, I want this. You know, I want to call that one that is not afraid to do the bel me niet register. I want that one. And not just the consumer, right? But not the neoliberalistic idea that the consumers do, but also the ministers and the wethouders and the politicians. It's a positive story that is not feeding into the neoliberalistic story of look how great and innovative this country is and they all do it by themselves and we don't have to do anything except cause chaos and drama, you know? It's really the idea of a community again.
And that's why I'm stressing tonight all the time the idea of value and working together. Because I think the sexiness of the future of climate is not about saving a climate, but it's like rethinking how can we live together instead of individualistic, alone, driven, based on money. And if that story is appealing enough, people will change into it. And the older generations, and I mean even the 40 plus won't, but the younger ones need it, because money is not anymore available for them like it was. So crisis plus good values makes a good story, and I think we should tell that one.
There was starting an applause over there, but let's save it a little bit.
I'm just going to add to that for a second.
Yeah, of course.
Because I just want to say that from the way that we're approaching it, the story that we've stopped telling is that the actual impact can happen at an individual level, and I don't just mean in a consumer choice. I mean the idea that that you build one building and you're going to have impact, that you do one project, that you deliver one example. The best you can do is inspire in that scale. And I think that's the story we've stopped talking about. We don't want to talk about that anymore. We don't have time for that story. What we need is system thinking. And the way that we're working is starting to think about, we're going to create a carbon removal strategy. We're going to get a lot of CO2 out of the air, and we're going to push it into other things. And we need systems joined up behind that. If it means it goes 5% into here and 90% into there, that's how the world's going to decide where it goes. But I think it's that thinking that we have to start adopting as a society. This isn't, we have regional problems, but the climate crisis is not a regional problem, it's a global problem. And it is evidence-based, and we can calculate it. And at least we have those tools to work with.
One was over here, right?
Correct. I was wondering, we're all talking about materials now and about building. But I'm missing a small point. Why don't we refuse building? How's your take on that?
I think that would be the first step. That's actually the highest circular strategy that you have. So if you don't have to build, please don't. Only if you really need the buildings, then do it. That's so simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's the best choice. And most of the time when you get into the discussions with clients, what we always propose is build less. Can you build less? But keep the same budget. Keep the same budget, build less, you have more euros per square meter, and then you can make a proper building and use the more expensive bio-based materials, or make sure that your building purifies the air. So that's building less is always the easiest to achieve less negative impact.
Short answer. Last question. Who has a question that has to be asked before we go to the bar?
How do you think about personal carbon budgets to improve more climate positive materials?
Scary. Yeah.
So do you mean on a personal level, like me as a person?
I think so,
that
yeah.
I have my own carbons in my budget.
Why is everyone silent?
And I can decide what to do and what not.
Why is it scary? It's a great incentive, right?
Without exhausting carbon. You cannot breathe. So you have a little budget.
There is some budget. You can do some.
Yeah, you have some.
You have to limit it.
Measuring, measuring everything scares me. I don't know if it's a world, if it's a world that I want to live in.
Vincent, he's going to explain it for you. It's going to be okay.
I know the discussion.
Okay. But because the Rabobank, for example, already calculates your carbon emissions if you want to for everything you purchase, and then you can set like your yearly tax. Your yearly tax calculation, the government already calculates what your income is every year and says, well, you have to pay so much taxes. They also can get the information of your carbon and say you pay
So that means that pollution becomes something for the rich, right? And that people who travel a lot are going to pay more, and the people who are sedentary pay less. So to make that equal and socially and democratic, it needs more than a Rabobank thinking of the system, right? Because the carbon bank from Barbara Baarsma, she came up with the idea, was really to save the bigger world. And then if you bring it to an individualistic level, then there's a very big chance of it becoming this new way of enhancing inequality. So I mean, I understand that you calculate, understand that you give, but if you give it back to individual people, then you're doing exactly what the government wants, making sure that it's our responsibility, and then you're damaging the poor, and you're helping those who don't care and already don't give, you know, then you're going to help them because they can pay it off.
Putting it on companies, though, that would be interesting.
They're going to do it. It's a European law. I mean, the Dutch love it. It's a new European law that you have to prove.
For big companies, not for...
Yeah, for big companies. No. And in 2027, for smaller companies as well, you have to prove, besides your financial report, you have to prove your green impact on green and your impact on society. Because they try to do good, but it's always difficult because you can, you know, you can walk around it. But I think for companies, it's already a good start. For individuals, it's very dangerous to do this.
I also think it's scary, but on the other side, what I would really appreciate is a discussion about useless carbon emissions. I mean, we have a lot of carbon emissions which are not adding value to our life. I mean, for me, a weekend trip to Mallorca, is this really adding value? Can I not just spend my time in my neighborhood, which is also very nice? And a debate around things like that, I would really appreciate. Not put a rule on it, but discuss about such things.
I'm going 9 days to Naples. Is that? No, not by. Okay.
That was even in my neighborhood, so I can go there.
Volker, did you want to do some closing remarks before we thank our guests? The founder of Group A Architects, who was behind the CARBONLAB, Volker van Hagen.
Thank you. I was behind the knoppen. I want to say very thanks to my guests, but I want to show you, before we go drinking, a beautiful 2-minute movie. That's about Osaka, which we did do with Biobased Creations and with Carson Brands Architects and Group A. We had lots of fun, and we're going to do this. Even if it's not in Osaka, we're going to do this also in the Netherlands. So please enjoy. See you at the bar. Start the tape.
Hi, konnichiwa. Ons paviljoen voor de Wereldexpo 2025 heet Building Sustainable Landscapes. Waarom? Omdat landschap de toekomst is voor een duurzaam Nederland. Kijk, op dit moment hebben we een niet zo positieve relatie met ons landschap. Stikstof, CO2, droogte, afnemende biodiversiteit, noem maar op. Maar wat nu als we de bodem verzorgen en het water opvangen? En als we gewassen kweken die bijdragen aan een klimaatpositief Nederland en waarmee je materialen kan maken om mee te bouwen? Kijk, dan krijgen we een heel ander soort landschap. Eentje waar mens en natuur samenwerken. Eentje waar boeren en bouwers en burgers elkaar weer vinden en elkaar versterken. A common ground for a healthy society. Wij zien in de heel nabije toekomst een revolutie ontstaan in het Nederlandse landschap. En daarom is ons paviljoen een landschap. Dat een gebouw is, dat een landschap is. De bezoekers in Japan kunnen straks letterlijk door het Nederlandse landschap lopen. Van de zee, langs het veen, door de velden, over de rivier, door het bos en in de stad. En ze kunnen voelen, zien en ervaren wat je er allemaal mee kan. Wij bouwen ons paviljoen volledig met natuur. Onze constructie is een modulaire Nederlands hout skeletbouw. Met daarin cassettes die de natuur dragen. En die zelf ook bestaan uit de natuur die ze dragen. Alles wordt gekweekt in Nederland of kan hier gekweekt worden. Ons paviljoen is CO2-negatief en circulair. En we werken samen met Nederlandse topdesigners om ook de inrichting volledig natuurlijk te maken. Maar het allermooiste aan ons plan is dat wij de 2 jaar naar Osaka toe nieuwe netwerken helpen groeien in Nederland. Netwerken tussen boeren, bouwers, innovators en producenten. Netwerken die essentieel zijn in de common ground voor een duurzaam en gezond Nederland. Dus ja, wij kweken aan een prachtig paviljoen voor de wereld, maar meer nog kweken wij aan een wereld voor Nederland. Wij hebben er in elk geval heel veel zin in. Hopelijk u ook. Tot ziens. Dag. Iedereen meezwaaien. Het is voor de credits. Matane. Dag. Is het gedaan? Het is gedaan.
On that note, we're ending. We're going to the bar. We'll be back on the 20th of April, 22nd of June, 21st of September. You can see the dates. Put them in your agenda for next discussions on in the series of carbon stories. Thanks to our guests tonight, and we'll go to the bar. See you next time.